welcome to another online Bloom and Wildflower tutorial. I'm Harriet Parry and today I'm going to be showing you how to make this fabulous floral wreath to add a bit of glamour and pizzazz to your door, either inside or outside all year round. I'm going to be using the Ari bouquet from Bloom and Wild, but you can use any flowers foraged from your garden. I'm also using moss as my base, so it's really eco-friendly and sustainable. So next of all, I'm going to show you the ingredients that we need to make this beautiful creature. So to make your floral wreath, first of all, you'll need yourself a wreath ring, which is this base. This is a metal wreath ring. You'll also need some moss. I've got some carpet moss here. You could probably forage some moss from your garden. I've also got my flowers. As I mentioned, I'm using the Ari bouquet from Bloom and Wild, but again, you could use some flowers from your garden. And you'll also need some wire as well. And finally, you'll need your floristry scissors. Or I've also got here a spritzer to spray your wreath with when you've finished to make it last that little bit longer and to keep your moss damp. So your flowers have got a little bit of a water source. Oh, and if you want to hang it on your door, some ribbon or some twine. So I'm going to take my wire and my wreath ring, and first of all, I'm going to attach. Just give your wire a couple of loops round. So I'm just attaching it to my wreath ring like this. There you go. So we've got it still, you don't want to cut your wire, you've still got it on your reel. I'm just going to lay that flat in front of me so it doesn't get tangled. And then what I'm going to do, this moss is our water source. So it's a damp moss. So your flowers, when you add them, they're going to last a few days. They'll last longer if you spritz them and keep your moss damp. But this is a really eco-friendly flower arrangement. All of these can be reused. The wreath ring can be reused, and the moss is obviously biodegradable. So I've got my moss here. I'm just going to rip off little bits, okay? And I'm going to wrap the moss. You're almost sort of making a sort of little coat for your wreath ring. And I'm going to simply wrap my wire. You want it quite tight, but not too tight that you can't get your flower stems in. And I'm going to sort of wrap it in the same direction, almost on a diagonal. So I'll just show you without any moss. This is how it will look without. So you've almost got a zigzag like this. So there'll be moss in between the zigzags. So I'll just unwind that. So I'm just going to keep going with my moss, ripping my bits off, wrapping it round, keeping my wire sort of in front of me so it doesn't get tangled. And I'm just going to keep wrapping it around like this. So I'm just making sure it's all nice and tight and there's no gaps. I just spotted one there. And then I'm going to finish, my wreath ring base by, I'm just going to cut off the wire. Okay, there we go, like this. And all I'm going to do is just give it a final twist, and I'm just going to stick the end, bend the end back into the moss. So now you've got your base. So your damp moss, like I said, is going to be your sort of water source, and you're going to pop your flowers into the moss, and that's how they're secured. So the next thing I'm going to do, and I'll just show you our example. I've done just a design on one half, which I think looks rather nice. And I've actually left the moss as a sort of feature, but it's completely up to you. Your design could be, you could use flowers all the way around, or you can do just one section like I've done here. So it's completely up to you. So sort of decide on your design before you begin. So I'm going to start, I've got some foliage here. I'm going to start with my foliage first. So I'm going to cut the little bits. I want to leave, I've cut about this much off. If you want it to be much longer, much more wild, leave your stems longer. I'm going to keep them quite short. But you want to take any leaves that are going to be popped inside your moss. So you want a nice clean stem. And all you do is is simply at an angle, screw it, so it's this sort of action. You don't want to break your stems. So it's sort of give them a wiggle and keep your finger as near to the moss as you can, because if you push there, your stem's going to break. Okay, and you sort of want to sort of slide them in at an angle into the moss like this. So I'm going to use a mixture of my eucalyptus and my pit. And I'm sort of going to kind of arrange from the middle out. If you were going to do it all the way around, you might want to work in one direction. Okay, so again, I'm just gently popping in my foliage, cutting. There's eucalyptus is great because you've got a really sturdy stem and you've got no leaves that you need to take off. And I'm going to sort of dress the outside and the inside. I'm sort of almost working from here and like going out. So I'm almost creating that sort of shape. So I'm just going to keep going, and I'm going to just add in my foliage first, and then I will show you the flowers. So as you can see, I've sort of added, you've got two types of foliage here. So there's a nice sort of contrast with my textures. So I've sort of like, I've done a bit of eucalyptus and a bit of pit, so they sort of sit quite nicely. I've sort of like brought the eye from this side to this side with the way that I've placed them. And I've also sort of worked slightly from behind. You don't want to put everything at the front because it's going to be too top heavy. You want to sort of also angle some of your foliages and flowers backwards to the side and to the front. So it's really nice and even. Okay, so next let's add some flowers. I'm going to do my roses next, my focal flowers. And again, I'm just going to cut them at an angle so you've got a nice sharp point because it's easier to thread them through your moss. Again, sort of wiggle them in at a slight angle. I'm sort of working from this out. So I'm going to have some coming this direction, some facing out the other way because I'm just doing my top section. So again, some higher and some lower, some at the back and some at the front. I have another one there to balance the eye. Again, so I'm just sort of leaving a couple of inches of the stem. You don't want them too short because they will probably fall out your moss, but you don't want them too long that they come out the back and aren't in any damp moss to give them some water. So next I'm going to add, so you've got your foliage and then your focal flowers. So now I'm going to add, I think I'm going to add my antirrhinums, these snapdragons. They give a nice linear shape. And I'm going to use these on either side and one in the middle, but slightly off center. When you're arranging, slightly off center is always more aesthetically pleasing. And if you're working in rules of numbers 3s, 5s and 7s, odd numbers. Okay, and this also, the antirrhinum really gives a whoosh across. So I might put one more here and one more here. Okay, and now we've got these little filler flowers, or finishing touches. I think I'm going to put my kangaroo paw in next. This has great texture, great definition. Again, nice stems for sticking in the moss. And you can break these down into little individual stems or keep a central stem. So there's lots to play with. Right, next the little hypericums. I think I'm going to cluster those together. I've only got two. I don't want it to be too sort of one on one side, one on the other side. So I'm going to keep those together. That's also another idea. I've sort of popped my roses quite sporadically, but you might want to think about grouping your roses together in clusters. Okay, and finally, I'm going to add these. Nice little texture. I think I'm going to pop, this is like a delicate, this is almost like the finishing touches. That's gone in. Don't force your stems. I've just broken a couple of my little cuties. They don't want to go in that spot. Okay, I think that's it. What a beautiful way of jazzing up your doorway. I'm going to give this a spritz with water now. So the flowers have got some extra moisture and will last that little bit longer if it's a really hot day. So let's give it a spritz. And this will, like I mentioned before, dampen the moss. There you go. And if you want to tie it on your door, as I showed you before, I've attached on the one I made earlier some ribbon just to the back or some twine, and you can tie it that way onto your door, or you could pop a nail and just simply hook it over the nail. No twine, no string needed. So it's up to you, and choose your ribbon to match your flowers. So there you go, a seasonal bouquet, seasonal wreath that you can make all year round with different seasonal flowers. So I hope you learned lots of flowery tips on that tutorial. So that's all from me for today, but I would just like to say, please send in pictures of your flowery wreaths. We would love to see what you create. So yeah, I will see you next time on another flower tutorial with Bloom and Wild. So that's lots of love from me and from Bloom and Wild, and we'll see you next time. Lots of love, bye.